In this lesson, we are going to work with a new site. You can find the files that we're working with in your Chapter 6 folder. Inside of the Chapter 6 folder, there's another folder called Big City Pet Sitters, and you'll need to create a new site that actually links to those files. If you need details on how to do that, please refer to Lesson 2. Let me go ahead and show you really quickly here also, just in case you need a refresher. If you go to Site and either choose New Site or Manage Sites, let's just go ahead and click New Site. And this is where you'll set up the name of your new site. I went with Big City Pet Sitters. And this is where you'll connect to the Big City Pet Sitters folder. Now I'm going to cancel out of here because I already have a site ready to go. So let me hit cancel and cancel. Alright, so two panels that you're going to be in all the time. One is the CSS Styles panel and one is the Files panel. As you create multiple sites, you can use the Files panel right here, the top little drop down, to be able to toggle between the sites that you're working on. So earlier in our previous lessons, we were working on my first site, and now I'm just going to double check and make sure that I am in the Big City Pet Sitters website that we set up just now. Alright, very good. Now in this lesson, you're going to see that we're working on a much cooler website than before. Let's take a look at it. Let's first scroll down the page and you can see a really nice layout, right? We also know that we can preview this guy in a browser by going here to this little globe icon, and I have Safari installed, so I'm going to go ahead and preview in Safari. And when Safari opens, we can see our layout. We see that we have some nice rollovers for our navigation area, and if I scroll down the page here, we have some other links. We have some text links here and some links here to the side. We have some text and some headers, probably a header 1 and a header 2 there. And if we scroll on down, we actually have a field and some links down here at the bottom. So by far a much cooler layout than we were working with before. So let's take a look at how it was built and some of the things that you're going to want to learn to replicate this. Well, in the previous lessons, we started looking a little bit about CSS styles, right? We learned that there are 4 different selector types. If you click this little button right here, you are going to see the 4 different selector types. So far, we have focused on the tag selector. The tag selector redefines an HTML tag. It takes the H1 tag and gives it a rule. Maybe you want it to be a certain color and a certain font. Or you could set up a tag selector to govern how the H2 tags look, and so on. Well, there are some other selector types as well. Let's take a look at this guy, class, right here. Let's create a new class selector. Well, what is a class selector? Well, we know that the tag selector is very powerful. For instance, if I create a rule that says an H1 is supposed to look a certain way, every single time an H1 is used, it's going to follow those rules. Well, what if I just want some text here and there to be styled? That's where you'll use the selector type of class. Now, classes, you can give them any name you want. Typically, I like to name a class by what it does and not how it looks. For example, if I wanted some red bold text, I probably wouldn't name my class red bold, because what if later I change it to blue? But instead of that, we might want to name it by what it does. For example, it might make text stand out. So we'll just name it stand out, and then we click OK. We'll now be in the CSS rule definition dialog box, and this is where we can set up our properties and values for our new style called standout. Maybe I would like to choose a nice red color and maybe the font weight of bold. Okay, I'll go over to font style and maybe choose italic. So I have 3 property value pairs set up. Okay, 3 properties set up, and if I click OK, you might notice that nothing really happened. But if you look in the CSS Styles panel, you're going to see a little class here that is waiting to be used. Well, let's check it out. How do you use this class? Before I show you, I would like to point out that classes always start with a period. We didn't type that in there. Dreamweaver did that for us. But as you look at the CSS and you study the CSS of various documents, you're going to notice a class right away because of the period. Well, let's add a class. What you'll do is highlight the text that you'd like to apply the class to, and then look down in the Properties panel, right down here under Class, and this is where any classes that are located in the CSS Styles panel are located. and their standout right there. All right, let's try that again. Let's select some text. Look down in the Properties panel, and once again, let's add our class called Standout. So now we have a different selector type that we've added called a class, and it's available anytime for any element in our document. All right? Well, that's definitely one way to dress up your document, but what about other ways like adding images? Well, let's do that. We're going to put our cursor right here before the W in the first header, and I'm going to hit return because I'm on a Mac. If you're on a PC, that'll be enter. And let's talk about adding images. If we look in our Files panel, let me just get the Files panel active here, you're going to see a folder called Images, and in this Images folder you're going to see a lot of different kinds of files, right? You're going to see some JPEGs and some PNG files, and you could even have GIF files. How would you add one of these to your web page? Well, very easy. You just click it and drag it over. Here's another thing though. How do you know what's what? All we see is file names. Well, Dreamweaver gives us a handy little panel called the Assets panel, and if we open the Assets panel, we can actually see what these images are. If it's not open in the background, which it may be, let's see, mine is down here at the bottom, so I'll just activate this guy. This is a great little panel that allows you to see what your images are by clicking down this list. Now, when you work with the Assets panel, be sure that this top little icon right here is selected, because if it's not, and one of these guys are, you probably will not see what I'm seeing. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that this is selected, and I really would like to find our logos, and I know it's in this list somewhere, and here is a small logo, and I believe here is the big city logo.png file. A PNG is great because it supports transparency, and because we're working on the web, we can actually use PNGs. PNGs aren't really printer friendly, but web people really like them. So I'm going to take this guy and drag it on my page, and all of a sudden I'm prompted to fill this in. What is this? Well, this is alt text. Alt text is this. It is the text behind an image. A couple of good reasons to use alt text. One reason is search engines like alt text, but a better reason is because your website is going to probably need to be compliant. That's so that people that have screen readers or special software that reads to them, well, those screen readers really don't know what to do with images, but instead if they have to read, now what I mean is software that reads out loud to people that may be visually impaired, right? This software has to read text, and that's what this alt text does. So I'm just going to type in big city logo, and let's click OK. And now we have an image on our page. Okay, if we select the image, you'll actually be able to see where it links to, and again, that place is right here in the Files panel. Very good. Well, let's scroll down a little ways and let's add another image. This time I'm going to go to the very end of the document, hit return a couple of times to get some space, and with my cursor here, I am going to add an image directly from the Files panel. Well, my little puppy here, his name is Dash, so I'm kind of partial to him, so I'm going to bring Dash and I'm going to put him out onto the page. If you don't want to fill in your alt text yet, you don't have to. You can simply click OK, and let me scroll down and see if Dash is there. There he is. What you'll want to do though is you will want to remember to do it later. What you'll do if you want to do it later is you'll select the image, and right down here is where you will put in your alt tag. So I'll just name him Dash the dog and click enter. All right. Well, if I wanted to center Dash, a very quick way to do that would be to go to the format menu, align, and choose center. And now Dash is centered in his container, which means his div tag. We haven't really talked about div tags too much yet, but we will. Let's check out what we have. Let's go here to the globe and preview in Safari, and now you're going to see a nice looking layout coming along very nicely. Alright, so we've started to dress up our layout. We've learned how to add images, and also we've created a class style so we can add a little bit more pizzazz here and there. And there's one other thing that I want to show you, and then we'll talk about building out the site with a Dreamweaver template in the next lesson. Let's close the browser and let's talk about creating a link. Let me just move the CSS styles panel out of the way. Now a link, there's two kinds of links. There's an internal link and an external link that would open something like Google, okay? Well, if you want to create a link from one page to another, typically you'll have your pages created. In this example, we only have one page and it's called index.html. Well, what if we want to create a link but we don't have the link yet? You can do that as well. That's called a null, N-U-L-L link. And one quick way to do that is like this. For example, let me just scroll down and we will have a services page. So maybe right here, whatever option you choose. When we roll out this site, we'd like this text to actually open the services page, but we don't have it yet. So I'm going to go right down into the link field here and just put in a £sign and click enter. And that lets my HTML know that, hey, I'm not quite yet a link, but treat me like one because I will be. Well, those are just a few things that you can do to get your files ready and looking good for the web. In our next lesson, we're going to take it a little bit further. We're going to build out this site using a Dreamweaver template, and we're going to touch on the other selector types then.